batting swing. They shouldn't be able to hit the ball.
Yeah, but those,
Look
I
at
mean,
Charles
those guys,
Barkley's swing, or Jim Furyk if you
Oh,
want,
yeah.
you want to look.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call to order the Sacramento Regional Transit District Board meeting for Monday, September 25th, 2017. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Director Budge? Director Hanson? Director Harris will be late. Director Hume?
Here?
Director Jennings?
Here.
Director Kennedy?
Here.
Director Miller?
Here.
Director Natoli? Director Chenier will be absent, as well as Director Cerna and Chair Moran.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum at 100 votes. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, and will be streamed live on RT's website. Tonight's meeting will air on September 27th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14 and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed caption. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Would everyone please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Take it at me. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's get started here. So first item.
Public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda.
Okay, I do have a number of requests to speak on business from the floor, so we'll start off with Jeffrey Tardigia. Where's Jeffrey? There's Jeffrey. And while Jeffrey's wandering up to the podium there, next will be Rick Hodgkins, and then Robert Kopp.
Yeah, we get it in there.
Good evening, Jeffrey.
Oh, board. Gee, the board has changed a little bit. Like your absent half, it seems like the bodies at this point in there. But what I am here to discuss is the kind of the sort of Henry, a year ago we had a meeting related to the bulletin boards in August. It's now a full year later. I'm glad to see that we've come up with some mobile apps and some other things that do better communication. And I also want to thank you guys for using the bus stop numbers so that people can figure out when you don't have a bus stop open, that there's a way of looking around at it. But I still say a year later now, we have not really figured out how to do B, G, and other shorthand for downtown related to the electronic bulletin boards. I finally see a change in there, which is, hey guys, when you use the Connect cards, tap it. So you tap it on and off through there to use it. That was 3.5 years ago that I made that suggestion when they testing the Connect card, because it was important to get people to use it. Now, system optimization. You know that when you did in Jackson, it took 18 months. Houston took 24 months through here. And now you're going to try in a year to do that, and you're not going to do any comprehensive assessment of specific bus stops. But you're doing that already for I-80 because of what you're needing to do and happen around. And you've got several others that it would be, I think, real informative, important, like what you're going to be doing when you talk about the arena today. I'm hoping you include about how you specifically, with all the bus service that goes through there now, conveniently, of what other changes are happening and taking place. The other thing on this is your say project thing through there. You got way down there about building stronger relationship with customer and stakeholders. This is where we're calling system optimization. That's a sheet that you've got floating around through there. I really think that, in a year, you've got a hard task here to learn who your riders really are. I think with the Connect card that you did this thing that reaching out to the seniors, and I will tell you that dealing with Barbara's reach out for the should we say, resident advisory boards with the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. I think that was appreciated that you guys went out there, and it really thrilled them that for seniors that they could figure out and understand a little bit how to use the Connect card. And I got 20 seconds left. So we will turn around and bounce back to the sheet and say, yes, is Doug Carter's contract going to end in June 2018 for the $500,000, or is this board going to continue it for dealing with the labor negotiations and other such factors? And is the item number 11, contract and consulting fees? So with that note, I will leave you guys to do things as a board.
Good evening to you. By the way, Robert's last name is Copeland, for the record, but it's spelled like Copland. Anyway, speaking of Watt 980, I was at Watt 980 this afternoon catching the light rail to come down here because he and I both had a meeting down on 18th and K at Disability Rights California. And at the vast majority of light rail stations that I've been at since using the Connect card for the first time, back on September 4th of this year, that this is 4 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, actually, I noticed that at Watt 980, you have two Connect card terminals that are too close together on the platform side, and you only have one other terminal that is at the bottom of the ramp on, the trains coming in to Watt 980 from CRC. When you get off, one thing I learned is not only do you swipe your card when you get on the bus, but you have to swipe it before you get on the light rail train and after you get off the train. Nobody told me that. That's just something that I figured out on my own. Needless to say, the vast majority of light rail stations have 4 Connect card terminals. Watt 980 only has 3, but 2 of them are too close together. One is at the ramp outbound, and one is in the very middle of the station. The one in the middle of the station should be, near at the beginning of the platform, near the stairs and the elevator, because that's something I notice. And also, I had, I think it was last month, I was getting on 21 at Sunrise and Old Auburn, or was it Sunrise and Antelope, and I was telling the bus driver where I wanted to get off, and she was telling me, regardless of the fact that I'm disabled, that it was up to each passenger to know where they wanted to get off and pull the cord, and that it's basically not her problem. That's the first time I had a driver say that before. It was about 3 o'clock on a Saturday, sometime in August. And that'll be it. I will have more on the GM report and also one other item. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rick. And Rick is followed by Robert Copeland. Got the name right there. Thanks, Robert. And then Mike following Robert.
Hi, my name is Robert Copeland. I'd like to thank you for fixing the water fountain over here by the men's restroom, because it was not working last time I was here last month. 2, you want to get more riders on RT? Ask the people that don't ride RT why they're not riding RT. I think that would be a very good suggestion, for 1. 3, I was going to go somewhere yesterday afternoon, and it would have took me over 2 hours to get there. Over 2 hours. That's unacceptable. That's the way to turn off people riding the bus, so I decided not to go. So you lost money there. 4, I could have gone, I went to Alameda and for a lot less time than I would have took on that one RT trip. That's unacceptable. Why? Get a better bus system in Sacramento County. Or people, And another thing, get apps that are besides English. That'll help attract a few riders if they have apps on their zip card or zip pass or whatever you call it, that are zip pass that are not in English. I think that'll help RT. You may want to tell SACOG that. And another thing, I saw, I was coming home Saturday evening about 7:30, and this one bus driver on a bus 30 route was very rude. That is, I find that unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Mike, and following Mike is Helen O'Connell. Evening, Mike.
Good evening, Chair Moran, members of the board, staff, and members of the public and audience viewing at home. I'm Mike Barnbaum. I had an opportunity along with Ed Schofield from RT staff and Director Pat Hume to participate at the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting September 22nd in Stockton. There are probably 4 takeaways I get from the meeting on that date. The board heard an item relating to the Amtrak operating agreement and the terms fixed price agreement and flexible price agreement as explained by the staff of the JPA. The item was approved unanimously, and there is now an operating agreement for the San Joaquins and Amtrak entering the year that starts Sunday, October 1st. The second takeaway was that staff presented an item to the board agreeing to a marketing contract for the Amtrak San Joaquin's Morning Express services. After the presentation, the board voted, and that was also adopted unanimously. There was another presentation by a citizens group from Bakersfield, California, that came to the meeting not too happy on an item the board discussed later, and we'll get into that in a minute, Mr. Chairman. They wanted to see a express skip-stop service, but one in which the focus was still having train service at Bakersfield. We felt that the tools and the ideas presented were good only in the terms of future planning purposes for perhaps adding an 8th and a 9th round trip to the San Joaquins once equipment is made available to the Oakland maintenance facility and it's shared between Capitol Corridor and San Joaquins. But at this moment in time, it was not feasible. And that led us to the item that was the biggest item perhaps on the agenda. And that was the approval of the new 7-train round-trip schedule, which includes the morning express train starting from Fresno. That will get into Sacramento at 7:41 in the morning. There will be 2 departures returning to the San Joaquin Valley cities. One, if you want to do a midday, leaving at 12:41, and one at 5:30. These service changes, and I'll conclude here, will take effect on Monday, January 8th, 2018. All current service in place today will run through January 7th.
Okay.
Any questions, or Director Hume, would you like to add anything to the report?
And Chair, thus concludes my report from the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority on last Friday.
Thank you. Thanks for covering it for us there, Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
The update
Yep,
is
and
all.
we're looking forward to the changes.
All right, thank you. All right, Helen, and following Helen is Arthur Kettler.
Hello, this is Helen O'Connell. SACTRU is thankful that they had a meeting with James Boyle concerning the route optimization project, and he brought in a lot of details and goals and timelines of the study. And looking forward, we're looking forward to working with RT on the project in support of creation of a citizens committee to meet regularly and work on a route optimization project. It was very nice of him to come down and explain the route optimization program to us on Saturday. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Helen. And then Arthur. Good evening, Arthur.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. I just have a quick question. When is Lewis and Orlando supposed to be completed? I understood that it was supposed to be completed by now, but I thought that was a little bit too soon. But I was just, and other people had asked and all as well, not just myself wondering, but other people had been asking. It doesn't look like that they had done much of anything really, but I know that they did where the street used to be. I know that they have the in and out, that part somewhat done, but other than that, that's all I see.
You have a quick answer for Arthur on that, or?
Looks like we'll have to get it back to you.
Okay.
All right, then. Thank you, Lee.
Thanks for bringing that up, Arthur.
Actually, we have a staff member can answer that.
David Solomon, I think, might be able to address this.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. City of Roseville had a construction delay on the Lewis Orlando Transit Center project, but they're currently anticipating completion in mid-October.
Great.
Yes. And that should be updated on our website. Is that right? Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for the clarification there.
I don't think your microphone is on.
It's funny. There we go. All right. So that concludes speaker requests on business from the floor. So next item, please.
Next item is the consent calendar, noting that you have speakers on 1, 3, 4, 5, and 7.
All right. So looking for a motion on 2 and 6.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
So moved by Director Hanson, seconded by Director Jennings. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 100 votes.
Okay, thank you. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Item number 1, motion approval of the action summary of September 11th.
Okay, so I do have a request to speak Brenda Anderson. So Brenda, if we could get some sound to Brenda there. Evening,
Hi.
Brenda.
Hi, I have questions. One question is on the status of the Lifeline Pass for the seniors of 75 on bus traveling for senior communities.
Okay, we're
What will
going to
be
get
the
to that.
status of that?
We're going to get to that later in our agenda here.
It's a later
Item
that.
number 11, Ms. Anderson.
Okay. Item number 11?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to do this.
And then did you have another question on this item, Brenda?
Not on that item. The next one was the obligated TransUnion status. That another item that I don't think they asked yet?
So you're looking at,
The issue we got in the Public Information Office.
I think you're looking at the prior agenda, Ms. Anderson.
well, yes, because she's
You guys
commenting
did
basically
have
on the
an
minutes
agenda?
from the last meeting here, so.
Okay. Go back. Okay, let's go back to the dynamic message sign. That's not number 1?
No, ma'am, that's item number 3.
How you come take this, and we'll figure it out.
Okay, so I do have your request card for number 3, Brenda, so.
Back to number 3?
Let me read.
No, we're not there yet, so, okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and move item, consent calendar item 1,
Second?
and seconded by Director Miller, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 100 votes.
Okay, so
Item
next
number
item.
3, and I'm just going to read the main topic, which
Thank
is
you.
delegate authorization to the general manager CEO to release documentation for solicitation of bids for the relocation of TPSS A1 and A055RC, and release requests for proposals for procurement of fair vending machines and dynamic messaging signs. And Brent Berniger is here to answer any questions.
Fantastic. So I do have a number of requests to speak on this. We'll start with Helen O'Connell, and after Helen will be Rick Hodgkins, and after Rick will be Russell Rawlings.
Okay, I'd like to thank RT staff for bringing the fair vending machines to the MAC board and for input and comment prior to the RFP being sent out. The MAC board was able to provide guidance based on personal experiences and requests that it be universal design being included in the RFP language. We support the staff in attempting to request a short extension from the California Transportation Commission to pursue the RFP process instead of the lowest bid process. We think this will result in a better product for Sacramento riders. We also request that the dynamic message signs be presented to the MAC at the next meeting so that our unique experiences can be included in the final RFP. The object and purpose of the MAC is to advise RT on system accessibility features and improvements. Dynamic message signs will inherently change and influence riders with audio-visual impairments, accessibility, as well as station design. We think this should be reviewed by the MAC as soon as possible. We thank the staff for their continued work on increasing accessibility within the RT system. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Helen. Okay, next up is Rick, and following Rick will be Russell, and then after Russell will be Brenda.
Yeah, I forgot to say last time, for those of you in the audience, including new RT employees that don't know me, my name is Rick Hodgkins. Speaking of the dynamic message signs, want to kind of reiterate what Helen said about there being accommodations for audio and visual impairments. Every time I'm at a light rail station, I always listen for something, and I hear nothing. I thought that something was presented to the MAC. Unfortunately, I'm in a training program on Thursdays, so I cannot make it to the MAC, but that any signs that are electronic should also be audible for people with visual impairments of any kind, whether they're partially blind or totally blind. Also, what about those who are deaf and blind, those with dual sensory? And I'm not just talking about that for the electronic and dynamic message signs. I also just thought about that with regards to Connect Card. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Russell Rawlings, and after Russell is Brenda Anderson. Good evening, Russell.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. My name is Russell Rawlings. I am the president of Dogfight Disability Organizing Group for Initiating Total Equality, and also a member of SACTRU. And this evening, I mirror a lot of what's already been said regarding the dynamic messaging signs. This is a feature of the system that is a first point of contact for many of your riders, and as such, it's going to be imperative that all riders are able to access it to the fullest extent possible. Currently, I would encourage every board member to go to a light rail station and take a look at the signs that currently exist and how they are underused even at their current capabilities. It would be much more useful to know at all times when trains are arriving, preferably real-time arrival information, not scheduled information. It would be nice if the signs presented that information in a stable and predictable fashion instead of having to wait and figure out when you could access that information. It's also important that audio be a component of that messaging. It's very useful for those who have visual impairment to know when a train is coming and which train it is that's coming. So thank you for your...
Great.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Russell. And Brenda Anderson. Brenda?
One of the things I was aware of at the Mobility Advisory meeting was that there was some issue regarding the reflection and coloring of the sign. So my question is, who finally makes the approval of that issue? The coloring, the reflection, the light or dark, what is the outline? Who makes that approval?
Okay, I think we can get a quick answer to that. So where's that fit in our staffing there, Henry?
Well, we have a group of staff, work on this, so it's a team, effort.
Okay, so it's a group of staff here, Brenda, that work on that. You're welcome. Okay, that concludes speaker requests on item 3, so I'll go ahead and move that item. Seconded by Director Hume. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 100 votes. Item number 4, conditionally declaring the Sacramento Regional Transit District Administrative Complex excess to transit operations as surplus, and Brent Berniger is here to answer any questions.
Okay, great. And I do have a request to speak on this item. Brenda Anderson. Sound of Brenda there.
I no longer have that question.
Okay.
Thank you
All right.
for your time.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
No worries. Director Budge?
2 requests to
Oh,
discuss
okay.
it.
Certainly. So,
And
Director Budge.
I will actually defer to Mr. Natoli because I want to discuss 4 and 5 together.
Okay, I just had a question. Just outlining the staff report, but I want to be clear that I think it's stated as to what the purpose is here. But in this declaration, does it in any way then, in the event we don't go forward with proposals that might come our way, does it diminish the ability then if we, remain at this location where we're at currently, and then seek in the future to get federal, state dollars, bond dollars to do work on facility upgrades or access improvements? I want to just be clear that by declaring this excess and surplus for the purposes of what you're stated in both on 4 and 5, I want to be clear that this doesn't somehow trigger something that then down the line we didn't foresee, but then puts us in a weaker position in the event we don't go forward with what's been contemplated here. So I don't know if that's Brent or you, Henry, or somebody. I just want to be sure of that.
And that's I would add to that just the basic question of, can this be reversed?
Okay. Good evening, Brent.
Good evening. Yeah, I'm not aware of any requirements that would prevent us from obtaining another federal grant. What we're trying to do here is just put opportunities out there so we could evaluate and consider putting these properties up for sale when another developer comes in and gives us a proposal. So I'm not aware of any at this point in time.
No. And I get that. I mean, that's very clear, and you shared
Right.
it at the last meeting. But by declaring something surplus and excess to the operations, without it, obviously, we couldn't operate. So, we have to do something differently. So I just want to be clear that whatever forms we fill out or how it gets transmitted, I don't know how, something gets back to Washington, D.C., and they said, well, that building, they declared that surplus 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I guess I'll just be clear that there's no misunderstanding about what we're certainly here at the dais, there's not, and what you've recommended. But
Right.
I just don't want that getting fouled up, and then somewhere along the line,
Okay.
somebody says, well, they said they didn't need that piece of property, so.
Right. So the declaration will not actually be something that we send to the federal government at this point in time. That's just putting it out there so the developer can bid on it, and they can look at that from a a bidding opportunity. Once we get to the point, if we get to a point where there is an opportunity where we could actually sell the property, then we'd request from the FTA a document saying we'd like to sell this property and convert this property into, whatever property we have, if that's the case. So we're kind of stepping ahead of ourselves. Just the declaration of itself is not something where we're sending it to the FTA and asking them for a change in treatment.
Yeah, no, I get that too.
All right.
Yeah, but information has other ways of getting to federal and state officials besides what we might send to them.
Got it.
So if somebody says, well, RT said they didn't need that. Well, that's not the explanation at all. We're looking for opportunities to maybe to improve, the operational aspects and certainly the administrative complex and the support systems for RT. So I think that's sufficient. I don't know if Director Budge had other questions about the reversibility of this or not.
The reversal of the.
Yeah, so. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes, so did you get that answered, Linda?
Well, I'm not sure there is an answer to it.
Yeah.
Because it seems, because on the one hand, Don has an incredibly valid point. Why would anybody put money, why would anybody award a grant or money, whether it's from SACOG or CTC or the feds, if the property is declared surplus? Even if we didn't ask them to take it off their books at the same time, it just it seems like too much of a contradiction.
I guess in the past we've done declarations and we've not run into this problem. That's where I'm going with. From my understanding, we've declared in 2015 when we declared surplus property. That's never been the case where someone's come to us and said, you've declared this property, therefore you can't apply for this grant. That's where I'm coming from in that response.
Well, and also I would just point out, Director Budge, that we are declaring it conditionally surplus.
Right.
So the condition is if we don't need it to be our administrative building anymore because we're able to find other property, then the property would become excess there. So there's a condition in front of it. We've actually done this before in the past. Declared this administrative campus conditionally surplus, and here we still are. So it doesn't affect
Nobody
the
gives
funding.
any money to fix it up either.
Yeah, I know. No, but it wouldn't affect the funding. Yeah, you're right. And then the other thing is that the declaration of something as a property as excess is something that the government code requires us to do. That's a precursor step, so that other public agencies have an opportunity to bid on the property if they're interested in it. Gives other public agencies first dibs, if you will.
Great, thanks, Tim. Director Miller?
Well, Mr. Spangler answered my question. I was curious, if we declare it surplus, would we have to go through that pecking order first of offering it to other government agencies? And of course, they could purchase it at fair market value versus a windfall, like a developer could see a higher value and maybe offer more. So we might not get as big a bang for our buck if a state agency, say, was interested.
Well, I suppose that's possible, but we have a very carefully constructed RFP here that is essentially saying we will sell you our property, but you have to build us a new. Bless you. You have to build us a new facility or find appropriate substitute facilities for us as part of the RFP. So that may diminish that concern a little.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other director comments, questions? All right, I have no other requests to speak on this item. So I'll go ahead and move item 4.
Second.
Okay, seconded. Who did that? Jennings, Director Jennings. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay.
Yes, I am opposed.
You are opposed? You are opposed?
I am opposed.
Okay, all right, so you got
She is
that?
opposed?
Yes, I'm saying no.
And abstentions. No abstentions. Okay, does clerk have all that?
I think so, and the clerk says it passes by 90 votes.
Okay, all right.
That's what the clerk says. So, item number 5, moving on. Resolution delegating authority to the GM CEO to release a request for proposals for redevelopment of SACRT's administrative campus and bus maintenance facility and waiving the highest bidder requirement for the sale of federally acquired real property in Title VII of the RT Admin Code. And Neil Nance and Don't know if Daryl's here, but Neil Nance is here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. So I do have a request to speak on this item, and that is Stephen Barras. Stephen, good evening.
Good evening, Board. Stephen Barassa, Chair of the Transportation Committee, Ion Sacramento. Well, the big red flag for me is the waiving the highest bidder requirement. That's concerning to me. I'd like an explanation of the wisdom of removing that safeguard, because this is a high-value location in Midtown. It's going to be a top dollar location, very desirable. So, you want to make sure that some reasonable figure in that regard is attained with the sale of this property if it gets that far. And I think it warrants transparency in regards to the bidding process. What are the bids that are being considered seriously and the ones that are rejected, and perhaps an explanation why those decisions were made. I think that's important for this. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. So we have our answer for Stephen on those questions. Good evening, Neil.
Good evening. Thank you, sir, for the question. Yes, the point is that we are going to get the highest value for that property. The federal government changed their rules a couple of years back, and RT hasn't changed there as of yet. But we're looking at the overall picture, and the highest value for that property is what we will accept. So it's not the highest bidder per se.
Okay. Great. All right. So any director comments? Director Budge?
Yeah. So from my perspective, this is very premature. I've had this conversation with Neil and with David, and I appreciate the incredible space planning document that we have before us, but that's really all it is. It's not a strategic plan. I understand there's a lot of language devoted here to different kinds of decisions or look-sees that were done going back to 2000 and 2001 when nobody but Don was here to remember that. And we have not done workshops. We have not done any actual future casting in terms of the directions that we all know certain aspects of transportation is taking. We are 2 years away almost from the completion of the route optimization study, and this is like a distribution problem. It's only based on where the current customers and the current routes are, and it has absolutely nothing to do with where people are actually living in this county, even here 16 years after the idea first came up. There's no question this is a valuable piece of property, but money can't be the complete driver. We have to be looking at where the customers are, where the routes are going to be. Do we continue to perpetuate the concept of deadheading from one place to where the routes are? It cries for multiple distribution points, and yet there is one, but we're not seriously yet talking about. We're asking somebody to come and tell us what we need, as opposed to saying what it is we have studied and investigated and think we want or think we need, because we've made an educated decision. We've talked so much about our consultant's contract and his experience in all these other systems around the United States or around the world, and yet it seems to me this would be an ideal time to tap his knowledge of how other systems use the information that came from their route optimization studies, or how they responded to growth in their regions. Just even the Denver Metroplex and the six-county region, and the way in which it's expanded, and how they chose to move out and serve their exploding populations. This is not the only region that is expanding. There's bound to be other really good examples of how people did it around the United States, and we don't have any of that information before us. So again, from my perspective, we can't just say, give us a proposal because it's very parochial. It's only based on today's point in time, and that's not logical in the world, in the changing world.
Okay, Director Hansen.
I just wanted to say a couple things real quick. One is, Stephen, I think, Neil, if you don't mind me supplementing your answer a little bit,
Please.
I think part of the reason why highest bidder is a problem is it may not be best value for the community. So the person that offers the most may not use, like, let's say we want to do a joint, somebody wanted to build affordable housing on one of these sites, but, you know, that would require maybe a land lease versus a payment. Somebody else wanted to buy it outright to build something that we didn't like. The highest bidder requirement would require us to choose the one that gave us more money, even though there may not be more of a public good in it. So basically, this gives us the choice to choose best value and have a little bit of flexibility. But, you know, I look at this a little bit differently than Linda, I think. I'm not sure that this process will come to any conclusion in particular. This is an exploratory process right now, and it gives us an opportunity to look at our overall operations in a much more comprehensive way, because right now they're fragmented. And any of the concerns that have been raised are potentially valid, and there may be opportunities that haven't been raised that are valid. And I think in looking at our overall operations, since the city devolved its transportation department in 1958 to create, we created the bus division by voter initiative in 1958. We devolved in 1978, something like
72.
73. Anyway, we've been here since the 70s, and we've grown in fits and starts over time, and it's not necessarily the best use. The other thing, too, is that RT may be able to increase service at another location through a consolidation of the services here and a repositioning. And I think we don't know whether that's what will happen or not, but we haven't also gone through the exercise. And I know, Linda, you're a planner, and God forbid we do a little planning here, but I think this is an opportunity to test out some theories and see what happens. And I'm keeping an open mind, but I don't necessarily think, despite our aspirations, that something in particular is going to come of this process, but I think it's a worthy endeavor for the staff. So I just want to say thank you for giving this a try and exploring it.
Okay, Mark, did you want to respond to this?
Actually, I can just add
Okay.
one point here. I think these, you know, as attractive as I view bus maintenance facilities, oddly enough, the community doesn't share my appreciation of bus maintenance facilities, and these are very difficult facilities to site in the community. We often don't have a lot of flexibility. So I'm just seconding Director Hansen's observations. I think that this effort will do two things. It will tell us whether or not the value of this property is sufficient to fund a relocation, and then it will also give us some ideas as to kind of what areas might be available for us. I know that when we were trying to build a second light rail maintenance facility, we went from Power Inn on the Gold Line to where the Fun Center used to be on the Gold Line, and could not find an acceptable community location. And, you know, rail is arguably less impactful than a bus facility. So I think that finding where developers, at least, in responding to our submittal here, find this as a suitable site and a use that's compatible in the community will be educational for us as well. I'm not sure we're looking at more than a second bus maintenance facility right now as we look at expansion, because there are also economics of scale around how big a facility you can have and the costs of staffing a facility. So several small facilities would be more expensive for us to operate than a second big facility. Generally, these are looked at as 250 bus maximum before they get too big to be they become unwieldy. So right now, if you look at our BMF2 site in McClellan, north of the river, a site strategically placed south of the river would give us a lot of flexibility in terms of where routes start and end, and from a deadhead, a wasted mileage perspective, routes, buses getting to the beginning of their routes. The other thing in siting a facility that's important to us is access to major freeways, arterials, so buses can get quickly from the facility to begin their routes as efficiently as they can. And so those are some factors that this exercise will kind of show us whether or not, what areas of the community this is going to fit best into.
Okay, great. And Director Natoli?
A couple of clarifications. So then, are the working papers then in their assimilation, are they then considered the campus master plan? Is that what we talk about this in the working paper one, you talk about a flow chart, but we had this presented to us last month as an informational item and for comments. But then, are we then presuming that the 3 working papers constitute the master plan?
No, sir. That's the beginning of our campus master plan. We were going to end up having 5 to 6 working papers, but we had this opportunity that came before us where we may be able to have someone do a lot of that work for us as from a proposal standpoint, like the cost and the reevaluation of a site provided by proposals. We would still do that work outside of that to ensure that staff understands what we're getting in that process.
So then we're going to go to the marketplace under the item with the direction to CEO to issue an RFP, and we're going to offer a stipend for developers, basically a $25,000 incentive for them then to engage in a planning process of which we are giving them access to our information, which is public, haven't completed all the working papers, and going to ask them on our money to develop a proposal that would include redeveloping this site and potentially locating a new site. So why do we go to the private developer and give them $25,000 to do that, including the public process? Why isn't it something that, again, maybe we work in concert with? Obviously, you can seek, potential partners. But why do we give the money to them in advance of knowing whether we're going to go anywhere with it? Basically, it talks about incentivizing them for what? If they think this is so valuable, and they have an idea working with what we put on paper, why do we need to give them money to help us figure out what we want to do here?
Yes, sir. I understand your question. And the ideal of this proposal, RFP, was to originally get it out there so we can get some proposals in, so we can get a first look to see if anything looked attractive to RT. And at that point, we would shortlist that number. Say we got 7 in, we would shortlist down to a feasible number. We would bring it to the board to approve that shortlist, and then we would ask those three proposals to go back out and further develop their proposal to ensure that we understand the financing plan and get some drawings and specs so we know exactly what we're looking at, and also give them opportunity as well as us to evaluate the deadhead times and the operational costs to get there. So the second part, the phase 2 of that work, will be a lot of work for that proposal, but we wanted to ensure that we got some folks to really look at this and give it a real look at.
Okay, so then you clarified one other point for me, and I'll leave on this, but so then that $25,000, if you have a short list, it would be available to potentially 2 or 3, so it could be not 25, it could be $50,000 or $75,000, or that pool of money would be available.
If the way we have it set up now currently, sir, is to have a $25,000 per firm. However, if we select someone at the end of that time, that firm would not get the $25,000.
Right. But again, so with the short list, you're anticipating not just an expenditure of $25,000, that could be $75,000.
Yes, sir.
For the work that we would be asking for. Okay, thanks.
So.
All right, Director Budge.
So, having had that clarification, I'm left scratching my head as why we don't just hire a realtor. If you want to go shopping for a piece of land instead of putting out an RFP, why wouldn't you just hire a realtor? Because part of what you're talking about is a very technical analysis that really our staff, you all, are capable of performing. I mean, somebody who builds really great buildings on the other side of the freeway is probably not the best person to ask to evaluate deadhead times and distribution of maintenance facilities and their effect on deadhead times.
I think, and I'll take a shot at responding to that question. I think that the idea here in going out with this document is that there are developers that may have an interest, or maybe a partnership of developers that have available properties that may fit our need and are interested in developing this site. So it's more than just a realtor looking for space for RT. It's the combination of what this site, what our campus here is worth, against what they can do at a site that they may have to acquire, or that they may already own, or that they may be able to procure for this. And then if we get past that threshold and it looks like there's a few feasible proposals, then having them do the beginning engineering so we know what it would look like with our maintenance facility on, and I'm focusing on the bus maintenance facility side, but admin is certainly in the mix as well, how that would lay out. And then you're right, Director Budge, they're not going to do a deadhead analysis for us. We're going to look at that refined proposal, and we're going to run it through our sieve as to whether or not it meets the needs of a maintenance facility at the location and the size and the orientation that they propose. Yeah.
Could I interject for a second?
Director Hansen?
I think that there's two things. I'm trying to figure out how to help here a little bit. One is, I think it would be helpful to have somebody with more expertise than we have in-house on this, and we've done that before because, we don't really do this on a frequent basis. So that's part of it. I think we're looking for expertise. The second piece of it is also, I think, I think where you're stuck, Linda, maybe I'm wrong, but trying to figure out how we balance a neutral party with a potential partner a little bit. And if we were going out to bid for a neutral party that would advise us on our campus master plan, then I could see paying them. And I don't think that's an unfair thing to point out. And I think, Don, you mentioned that as well. So I think there's a little bit of a muddle, and maybe what we could do is either go out and find a neutral party that could advise us. I also think that if we just went out to RFP and asked for a developer team or set of teams to respond, they would come with ideas and probably spend their own money and do the work, which we've seen happen before. So we could take the money out of this if that's part of the hang-up, but keep that in reserve for a future phase of the process, because certainly if we do anything, we'll need to have probably some independent help. I'd be open to one or both of those options if you want. Take the money out, set it aside for an independent person to advise us and to help us craft those things that we could identify later, or one or the other. But I don't necessarily think that it's helpful to hash it out here otherwise. I don't know.
That's what workshops are good for.
But we also
Sorry
need
about
to. I would just ask.
Especially since we haven't had one since 1973.
So let's.
We had a workshop not long ago, Linda. We've had a workshop here.
So the importance. So what you're mentioning, Director Hansen, is the 25,000.
Well, it seems to be the hang up.
Well, yeah, I would just respond to that. I think it's a fair kind of restatement of it, that maybe we look for a neutral party that would be our advisor, and if it's not the staff level, then, or you can go out the RFP and then see what that brings, and then you're going to have another juncture which you're going to shortlist it, and then we can decide if you want to spend money or not. And I think let them tell us how they would want to proceed, and then we got a way to evaluate that. So I think maybe we're jumping a little too quickly to your point, and muddling a little bit. So I'd be okay to go to the marketplace. That's part of what we're asking here.
Mm-hmm.
See what that brings us, and then you can be.
Mr. Chair.
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Henry.
Actually, that's the point that actually Director and Attorney just mentioned. This actually staff has started this in last at least 9 months carefully from many different angles, and we put this here like Director Hansen just mentioned. This is really just beginning to explore the potentials for the future. and we would like to have different meetings or workshops to discuss this further down the road. In terms of this 25,000, and we certainly can, either take out now and find a neutral party to help us, or down the road, and when we actually start to shortlist, and after many discussions among the board and the staff, and to figure that out. But I do not imagine about $75,000 we're going to spend that. And 25,000 may be reasonable, and also this is actually the common practices when we do something like this. So that 25,000, I think maybe just not 25,000. I don't think 75,000. And also, this is 10 years, project in the making. Start long time ago. When we proposed this, we already, told ourselves this is going to be a very tough project. Do we have the courage or guts to start the project? Then down the road to work with board, work with community to say what would be the right direction we should go. If we do not do this, wait 2 years later, then 2 years later passed. But I think this actually, when we start exploring this, it's going to fit with the route optimization study together well enough. I don't think we are going to make decision within 6 months or whatever, but 6 months later, 9 months later, our route optimization will give us some good indicators. So we just want to start the process, then walk down the road. So that is the purpose from beginning, and we can wait. Then maybe another 5 years or more. But the issue right now is, I just want to give one example. Our bus facility here probably is the only one bus facility in the nation. We have to cross the major road to park on that side, and that is very dangerous. And about a couple weeks ago, Mark Over and a whole bunch of us had a light visit on the facility from 10 p.m. to midnight, and look at how we are working on that facility. And our staff told us, mechanicals, they told us, we really need to address this issue. It's not safe, it's not good, practices to have a major bus facility in the middle town or downtown area, in the residential area. So all this type of feedback we heard from the community. Last time when we attended the meeting with the East Sacramento Improvement Association, about 80 people there, they said, Henry, we really need you guys to do something. This is not a good place. So without talking too much, we have think hard, and we are really in this junction to say, should we start on something now, then work with the board community to say what is the right direction step by step in the future. And I can promise this is we're going to engage everybody to move forward down the road.
Okay, thanks, Henry.
Yes.
Could I try to make just a motion here? I would move forward I would move that we approve the RFP, set aside the funds for a later date, and have the staff bring back to us a comprehensive sort of plan, or maybe not a comprehensive plan, but a timeline for what we would do and how we would do it. It's basically a flow chart for the board and the public to understand the next steps should this go forward, and to allow us to review that. So,
would you do that before releasing the RFP?
No, the RFP to me is sort of a pleasantry as we move into this exploratory phase. When we get back the response, we'll have an idea of what our options are, at least at the near term, and then we have more decision points in front of us. So an
People who
RFP is not
respond to RFPs don't treat them as pleasantries, frankly.
I understand,
Because it
but
takes a huge amount of time and staff effort to
I would
really respond adequately.
that's the motion. I'm trying to bring some consensus to the board, and if that doesn't work, I apologize, but I do think it's a worthwhile exercise. So,
Could I interject real quick?
Director Miller?
I know this is a grander scale, but to me, this is eerily reminiscent of what we went through to build our new city hall. And it was that first step of deciding that it had served its useful purpose, the repairs and bringing it up to ADA and energy codes was just too cost prohibitive. And we had no idea where we were going, but we took that first step. It's very controversial. For us, it was a 3-year process. We'd actually selected a site that nobody liked. We felt like we were settling, and things just came together at the right time with Dignity Health coming and offering us 4 times the value of the property, and which allowed us to put it down on the new city hall, and a developer who had a project fall through with the FBI. And so the perfect parcel became available, and we'd never even imagined that with the first step. So it's a long process. There's going to be a lot of fits and maybe some giggles along the way, but it's not an easy process. And what we're thinking now, I think, and what we end up with, I don't even think we can imagine at this point or even plan for. We have to see what's out there, and perhaps, with the concentration in medical here, we get an offer that we can't refuse, and start looking ourselves for a new place. So
great.
Just wanted to add that in and second the motion.
All right, great. So I guess we have a motion on the floor and a second. Does that motion with the stipulation of Director Hansen as far as just kind of setting this I assume this 25,000 we keep talking about, is that does this process move forward okay with that amendment? Okay, I just wanted to make sure with staff on that.
Sure.
So
Clarification.
Director Nicole?
Yeah, just a clarification though, and Henry, I heard what you said, but the staff report, the written staff report, and I assume maybe you're amending it, but it did say, and the motion obviously would set as pointed out, another juncture this board would make its determination when we knew the short list, but it does say, proposed budget assumes 3 proposers would advance to the short list. The short list of proposers would be given a stipend of $25,000 each. So I didn't make the $75,000 up. It was referenced here. So you said it might be $25,000, assuming, I guess, maybe only 1 proposer on the short list. So I guess we can reserve that conversation for a yet to be determined date. I'm okay with going with RFP. I think the motion structures that, but I would just say that if we're, and when you said set aside the money, Steve, did you mean that we wouldn't be dealing with the money issue now? That would come back at a later date? Is that what you meant? Okay, I want to be clear. I don't know if you meant reserve
I was trying to phase it, so
Yeah.
we do the RFP. The staff would give us, at the time they come back with any responses, a path forward.
Sure.
And then any funds that would need to be expended to move forward would also be identified with their purpose at that time.
And if we can do it on somebody else's money, I think that's to our advantage, but we'll see what that brings. But, okay, I'm fine with that. But I just want to be clear that 75,000 didn't get pulled from the air. I was using the calculation that was in the staff report, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so a healthy, if not lengthy, banter on that item. So any other director comments, questions before we call the roll on that motion and that second? So you have the maker of the motion, the second, Cindy?
I do.
Very good.
Director
So
Hansen and Director Miller is the second.
very good. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Okay, so we got registered 1 no vote there, and any abstentions? Okay.
Motion passes at 90 votes.
All right, thank you for that. And then next item.
Item number 7, resolution delegating authority to the general manager, CEO, or designee to execute grant documents with California Governor's Office of Emergency Services to receive fiscal year 16-17 Proposition 1B California Transit Security Grant Program, California Transit Assistant Funds. And Brent Berniker is here to answer any questions.
Okay, Brent, and we have a request to speak on this item. That's Brenda Anderson. So if we can get Brenda the microphone there.
Where would you be without this funding?
I'm sorry, where would I what?
Where would you be without this funding?
Okay, so the two projects that you see here, one of them is the radio communication system upgrade. We're required to upgrade our system from an analog radio system to a digital system. If we don't upgrade the system, then we're going to have problems communicating with our bus dispatch and whatnot. So that, and train, sorry. And I probably can have Mark Lonergan talk a little bit more about that project, but that's just in general. The next project is the security and systems and communication infrastructure upgrade for about $413,000. About half of that money is going to go to an e-citations process. The county has a process where they won't be writing manual citations anymore, and we have to do this through an electronic system. So this money will be going to that. If we do not move to an electronic system, then we won't be able to process citations through the county.
Would you not move to electronic system?
We need to go to that other.
I know you need to. You're saying you need this funding.
Yes.
And if you don't get the funding, what happens?
So on the first case, we wouldn't be able to upgrade our Motorola.
Would not upgrade. You have surpluses.
We would not. Then maybe I could have Mark. Let me see if Mark. There you are. He might be able to explain that.
Don't run away so fast.
I won't. I'm just going to have him help explain it.
Yours and one part was his.
Right.
Well.
He's going to be able to answer this better.
So all of the radios on RT's buses and trains are part of a regional radio system. All of Sacramento County, city, police, fire, everybody's on the same radio system, and we all participate in a consortium that helps the county manage that system. That consortium years ago decided to upgrade the system to a fully digital system, and that's been a multi-year process. RT is one of the last holdouts in that conversion. And if we don't convert, we will reach a time here in the next few years where our radios will no longer work for us, and our buses will not, and our trains will not be able to talk.
Why is RT the last holdout?
Because of funding.
Excuse me, point of order. I don't believe the rules allow usually for members of the public to have it back and forth with staff. Our rules usually allow for a public comment, and then if the board...
I thought I was allowed to ask questions.
You can, and what we'll do, Brenda, is then direct those questions to staff.
And have them
if you
get
can
back
just
to you.
Right. So
Okay.
You're saying I can ask him, but not him?
no, you could direct your questions to the board, and then we'll
Can you answer these questions I just asked?
well, I'll ask the questions of staff. So so any other questions, Brenda?
My question is,
Okay.
where will RT function without this funding?
Okay, so I get that. So okay, so I guess the simple question then is, and I think this is what Brenda's asking, is if we didn't have this funding for what you just described the needs are, then I assume we find this funding from some other source.
So yes, the projects are both, and Brent covered both of them, are mandated projects on RT, and absent funding them this way, they will need to be funded in another way, or we will have a detrimental impact on our operations.
So it just come from another fund, Brenda. So, all right. So
move approval.
So with that, motion by Director Hanson, I'll go ahead and second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right.
Motion carries at 100 votes.
All right. Next item, please.
Next item is the General Manager's Report, item number 8.
We finished the consent calendar.
Okay, Henry.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Chair, members of the board, and the public. First, allow me to introduce Paratransit Inc. CEO, Mrs. Tiffany Fink, and thank Tiffany for her strong leadership and excellent partnership spirit. During the last year, under Tiffany's leadership, Tiffany, are you there? Okay. PI team, Paratransit Inc., PI team and RT staff have worked together very effectively to look for best industry practices to improve the productivity and better serve our disabled community. As a result, today, we have successfully signed a new 5-year contract agreement under the terms approved by both PI board and RT board 3 months ago. Tiffany just gave to me about like 30 minutes ago the contracts. So I want to thank all members from both PI board and RT board, especially Director Don Attorney, Director Pat Hume, and Director Stephen Hansen, for your innovative guidance during the contract negotiation process, and for encouraging staff to pursue excellence, to be bold and visionary, which this region has envisioned for a long time. So thank you, Tiffany. Can you speak for a couple seconds if chair allows?
Absolutely. Good evening, Tiffany.
Good evening, Chair Moore and board members. I'm Tiffany Fink, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Paratransit. And I want to echo what Henry had to say and really thank the RT board and the executive staff at RT for really working with us on this. I think it's safe to say that we're probably at the best place we've been maybe in our history of how we're working together. Going through the process, we really kind of threw out everything we knew of the past and sat down and really looked at the challenges ahead for both agencies and how to get to a place where actually working together makes us stronger. And so from that, we really look forward to not only the agreement we now have in place, but we've already started the conversation on places where we can look at challenges ahead, such as zero emission bus and planning and coordinated service, so that instead of being on separate paths where we challenge these issues to get apart, we can actually put all of our resources together. If you put them together, we're the 2 largest transit systems in the region. So together, we're a really large fleet with a lot of resources and a lot of revenue that we really need to protect. So we really look forward to working together and using that strength and partnership to figure out how we can go preserve and build the system here in Sacramento.
Great. Thanks, Tiffany. Thanks for your help there.
So I have a second update. Second update is to provide some brief update on our preparation for service to events at the arena for the 2017 and 18 event calendar. We will continue to build on our successful service plan, which we implemented last year with the opening of the arena. 3 and 4 car trains will operate for Kings Game and major events, and the actual trains will operate on both gold and blue lines for a 45 minutes period after the event. Beginning with the first pre-season basketball game on October 2nd, we will provide customer assistance staff in the downtown area and the K Light Rail Station to help our customers use our system. New this season will be the implementation of the Connect Car and Zip Pass. Zip Pass is our new mobile fare payment app. In the last 2 weeks since we implement, we have had over 1,000 people sign on that. That actually was very good because the previous app for almost a year, we only had 1,800 people sign on. Actual security will be provided both on-board light rail system and 8 downtown stations during major events, which was the last, the practices of last season. And actual cleaning will be provided both in our stations and on board our light rail vehicles. We will also provide free ride days during the season to encourage people throughout the region to try RT. The first free ride day is Wednesday, October 18th, the first regular season home game day. Last year, more than 2/3 of the event attendees riding RT were from the suburban areas. 2/3 of the event attendees riding RT were from the suburban areas such as Folsom, Elk Grove, Rancho Cordova, Central High. And so our arena service truly is a regional service and benefits all citizens in this region. So this concludes my GM report, and I would like to invite Brent to provide a monthly financial report, a very brief report. Thank you.
Right. Great. Thanks. Good evening, Brent.
So I think I heard the word brief, so I'll try to stick to that. So we completed the month end for close for August of 2017, and oops, sorry, thank you. Is there a clicker too, or do I just use the mouse? Thank you, Adam. So we completed the month of August, the close for August, and the non-financial numbers and financial numbers look really good, actually. You'll see in August, we had more revenues than expenses. We exceeded revenues by expenses by about $205,000. On the budget to actual side, when you look at the just revenue section, you'll see that we exceeded the budget by $101,000. And what pleased me most was seeing that fair revenues from a budget to actual expense variance, or from a budget to actual standpoint, has a positive 2.1% variance. We're really pleased with that because we were actually seeing revenues on a rolling 3 and 6 month trend going down. So this is a sign that it's kind of picked back up. So we're really happy about that. The other area, though, I want to just focus on in this August results is you'll show in the expense section, we're under supplies. You'll see that we're under budget, or we're over budget, by $167,000 in supplies, and this is something that is always kind of a concern for us. What we're seeing here is we have, in this category of supplies, we have the cost of maintaining our light rail equipment, our fare vending machines, CNG costs, and bus parts. What we're seeing is the cost to repair these light rail cars have been going up because this is aging equipment. Our fare vending machines have been failing in the bill acceptor notes. And so some good news here is we just recently showed there's issue paper where we're going to be getting new fare vending machines, but we still have that need for these light rail spare parts and new light rail equipment. And I think if we can get that accomplished, we can start seeing a positive variance, but it is going to take a little bit of time. So then the next column we show here, or the next section we show, is year to date. And if you recall back in July, we had a positive $450,000. So the combination of August and July year to date, we're ahead by $668,000. So that's really good. So moving on to the revenues, like I mentioned, in August we're exceeding the budget, and year to date we're also ahead of the budget at this point. When we're looking at last year, you'll see we're slightly down from the budget, and that's because last year, you'll recall, we had that fare increase. Typically, when you have a fare increase, you get a big bump, and then following that, you don't get that same bump. So we're in this pattern where last year there was a fare increase. This year, we don't have a fare increase, but we also have noticed that people are shifting to the electronic fares, so that's another reason why it's down from last year. The next slides are our fare box recovery comparison. You can see we're exceeding our budget. We're still at 20.8%. The budget's at 20.2%. Year to date, we're doing well. And just like in that last slide where we saw that fares weren't above last year, the same kind of situation is occurring here. We're still at 20.3 year to date, but we're under last year's numbers for fare box recovery. The last slide is the one we're really happy about. We've seen a lot of decreases in ridership. This is the first time we were able to say, well, actually last month we had a little bit of a positive blip there, but in August we had ridership go up 2.8%. And so that's really kind of matching what we saw in the fares, where we saw that fares exceeded budget by about 2.1. It looks like there's a coinciding trend here where ridership and fares are both going up at the same time, which is great. On a monthly basis, on a year-to-date basis, you also see that going up. When you look at this new chart we added, this chart kind of compares last year's ridership to this year's, and what you're seeing is they're matching. If you looked at this last year, you would have saw a large divide. So what we're seeing is ridership is at a point where it's starting to improve, and we think we've kind of hit that bottom, and we're starting to move up. So that's concludes my presentation.
All right, great. Thanks, Brent.
Yep.
So, Director, questions, comments? Okay, I do have a couple requests to speak on this item. Anything else, Henry, or is that it for General Manager's report? Okay, so Rick Hodgkins, and then Mike Barnbaum, and then Brenda Anderson.
Okay, first off, with regards to electronic fare, as of September 4th, 3 weeks ago, I started using the electronic, the Connect card, and Again, I'd like to bring up the situation at Watt I-80 where you should have, a Connect card terminal at, because of how Watt I-80 is set up, the two machines that are on the platform, one should be at one end of the platform, the other should be at the ramp, at the handicap or ADA ramp. Instead, the one that should be at the other end, opposite the ramp, is it's more in the middle. So I don't know how that could be fixed. Also, speaking of electronic fare, I would point out that hopefully those that are using, like, let's say, not credit cards, but perhaps debit cards or their bank to pay for their fare, hopefully that you're not getting anything bounced, because that could result in a dip in fares. And my experience or my observations anyhow is if you try to pay for something, you might overdraw the account if you try to pay for something without enough funds in your bank account. Also, with regards to performance, district-wide performance, I want to point out that today, getting off bus 1 at Watt and I-80, and last week getting off bus 21 at Matherfield Mills. This was the 7 o'clock bus 21 I took from Sunrise and Antelope. We got to Matherfield. I missed my connection to light rail going to Amtrak. I don't think the schedulers really take into account, the buses that feed into light rail stations. I don't think that the schedulers take into account the unpredictable things, like, I'm not just talking about getting wheelchairs on and off, traffic congestions, like along the Sunrise Bridge, other things that could be holding the bus up that are unreasonable. And I'd rather take RT than paratransit to the Golden One Center events. Unfortunately, because everyone is refusing to extend the 21 later at night, you probably won't see me at any Golden One events for years to come unless Section 8 allowed me to move closer to light rail. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rick. Mike, and then following Mike is Brenda Anderson.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, and thank you, Henry, for the report about the preparation for the Golden One Center events. We felt that we've been very successful so far since the first open house of the Golden One Center occurred back on Saturday, October 1st, 2016. It's been very successful so far, and a facility that truly is bigger than basketball. We've not only had Paul McCartney, but we've had some great events like Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, Hall & Oates, Stevie Nicks with the Pretenders, and Neil Diamond's 50th anniversary tour. The WWE has come through, monster trucks, and Sacramento Kings community relations events on non-basketball event days. So it's truly been very remarkable. Thank you for letting us know that there will be a customer assistance program beginning this season, beginning with the preseason game on October 2nd. That we hope is going to be a smash hit, and we hope to guide people to the customer assistance area on any and all event nights, beginning with the preseason game on October 2nd. We have delivered copies of the schedule of all 43 home games to the Yolo County Transportation District, staff at the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, the board of the San Joaquin Regional Transit District, as well as the Roseville Transportation Commission and the Sacramento Area Council of Governments Transit Coordinating Committee. So we think that we've done a huge outreach to get copies of the schedule and any comments any of the entities had, particularly about moving the majority of the weeknight and Saturday night start times from 7:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. with the exception of 5 nights, as well as Sundays, which will begin no later than 6 p.m. Also, big thanks to Paratransit's efforts with the city and community engagement, that whenever there's a road blockage going on for most vehicles, Paratransit will be allowed to drop off right at the VIP entrance on L Street.
Right.
And will be given access by the road closures in place for everyone else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Brenda Anderson?
Most unfortunate, Washington, D.C. didn't get a copy of calendar events. My question regarding the calendar events, this is an online system?
Okay, so any other questions, Brenda?
Yes, the question regarding calendar events, it is an online system. Is it only for the Golden One?
Okay.
You have River Cats games, you have
Okay, what
issues
else you
with
got?
Capital.
Any other questions, Brenda?
Yes.
Okay, what else you got?
What other calendar events do you have?
Okay, so what other calendar events? Okay, anything else?
I didn't hear your answer.
Any
sir.
other questions?
I didn't hear your answer, sir.
Well, I'm gonna ping staff once we get done with your questions. So
Okay, let's go with what we got.
Okay, so that's it. Any other
Yes.
questions? Okay.
No other questions.
So online, I believe. Go ahead. Quick answers to these.
Yeah, online, already. Yeah.
Okay, and the Golden One Center it's just the events for the Golden One Center that we have online because we have that special service. Okay, and then so there are no other calendar of events other than the Golden One Center because that's just germane to our service to that arena. So, okay, great. Okay, so I have no other requests to speak on this item. So with that, next item, please.
Item number 9, resolution delegating authority to the general manager CEO to award a contract for Rancho Cordova Instrument House and Substation wraps, presented by Mark Lonergan.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mark.
So this action actually will fulfill, when it's completed, a long-term commitment to Rancho Cordova. Shortly after we extended into Rancho Cordova with a light rail line, the Gold Line, in 2004, we were asked to beautify something that, well, again, in my opinion, looked pretty nice, but they didn't like it in Rancho Cordova. Our instrument houses and our substations, which are very industrial looking, which I guess tells you what my tastes are. And so we did one. We wrapped the instrument house at Zinfandel in a brick wrap, and it's been that way now for quite a few years, and it's proven to be durable. We secured grant funding to wrap the rest of the instrument houses and substations in Rancho Cordova, and as I think we all have seen, Rancho Cordova has done a ton of work along Folsom Boulevard to add sidewalks and landscaping and really make the corridor much nicer. And this effort on RT's part to wrap the instrument houses certainly fit in and support and assist Rancho Cordova in that, making that just look much nicer. We are out to bid now. Bids were due on Friday, but as a course of the bidding process, we extended it until this Thursday. So I don't know what the bids are yet, but we expect to get good bids for this. The general manager, if you take this action, will have the authority to award, and then we will know better once we receive the bids what the timetable and schedule will be, but we think it's a 2 to 4 month production and installation time frame.
Okay, great. So I do have a request to speak on this item. Any questions or comments for Mark before I get to that? Okay, Brenda?
One question, why the extension? Second question, is this going to be an ongoing process for other areas other than Rancho Cordova?
Okay, we'll get some quick answers to that.
I can answer that question. We do not have money to do for other areas. So this is a one-time project.
Okay, so one-time project, and then I believe as far as the reason for the exception.
There was a request for a clarification from one of the potential proposers that we honored and then gave them time to respond.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm very happy to move approval.
Get her done.
Oh.
Get her done.
I can guess how you're going to vote on this one.
Don remembers that this dates back to Dr. Scott. She actually cut the ribbon. It was the first one at Mather Field, one of the great big ones.
Yes.
And staff, might have been Mark himself, wrapped this great big red bow around the thing, and we all cut the ribbon. It was marvelous.
Very good. So moved proudly by Director Budge. Second on that?
Second.
Second by Director Natoli. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 100 votes. Item number 10, resolution approving amendment number 1 to credit agreement with U.S. Bank National Association for an extension of the $29 million line of credit facility to September 29, 2018, presented by Brent Berniker.
Good evening, Brent.
Good evening. So this issue paper is to request an extension to our annual line of credit we have with U.S. Bank. So as you know, our federal revenues make up about 19.3% of our FY18 budget. And these revenues come in on a reimbursement basis, and we're able to retroactively apply these funds to the costs that are incurred during the year. That budget is based on the prior year. And then the actual grant is not awarded till about the April timeframe of a fiscal year. So what we're doing is we're spending money throughout the year, and we're not receiving the cash until probably around the June-July timeframe. So we need a line of credit to backfill for this cash flow timing issue. And actually, in just recently, we applied for the remaining 7/12 of our federal money for last fiscal year, and that money is going to come in, the last 5/12 of the money, it's going to come in tomorrow. We received the first 7/12 back in, I think, the July timeframe, and so now we're getting the last amount tomorrow. And at this point in time, we're typically able to pay down the line of credit. Some things that have changed with this line of credit is we actually have some good news because of our good financial performance. The trends and the upgraded credit rating, we're able to negotiate lower fees with the bank. And this savings is going to probably result in about $50,000 to $75,000 less in expenses this year. So we're really happy about that. And then in addition, the bank informed us that if this performance continues, we'll be in a better position next time for renewal, and we could actually get into probably a 2-year or maybe even a 3-year agreement. And what that does is that helps us with line of credit fees from a bank, from a legal perspective, because each year they have to run this through their legal department. And also this could help lower rates if we get into a multi-year agreement. So staff at this point recommends approving this first amendment to the credit agreement with U.S. Bank.
That is certainly an encouraging trend there, so great work on that. And I know that's just a reflection of the overall financial improvement of the agency, so it is nice to see that reflected in something like this. So I do have a request to speak on this. Any questions, comments? Okay, moved by Director Harris.
Second.
Seconded by Director Hansen. The request to speak is Stephen Barassa.
Hello, Stephen Brassa, Ion Sacramento. I'm curious, I would like to see the data from FY17 to show what the rates were, what was paid. I'm curious about the figure this year for interest expense. If you don't use any of the $29 million line of credit, you'd be paying about close to $200,000 in interest. If you tapped out the full amount, you'd be closer to $920,000. So I don't know how you get I guess it's the projects that you've determined that you're probably going to move forward with using this money for, and it specifies streetcar and Green Line to the airport. And so this figure amount there must be a plan of what's going to be allocated for FY 2018, and it'd be nice to see the list of what those expenses are. For those two projects. One thing, in June 22nd, the board, comes on the heel of the board approving Prop 1A funds, $25 million to the streetcar project. And at that time, Henry Lee indicated specifically, emphatically, that there would be a contract where RT wouldn't be liable for any operations or maintenance with the streetcar project. That was a pledge when donating that money. And so it'd be important to see the accountability on these funds. What's concerning also is the way this money is to be paid, is through the federal preventative maintenance revenue, the 5307 urbanized area funding, and the 5337 state of good repair. And it seems to me, when you think of preventative maintenance and state of good repair, we'd be looking more at our legacy system, our aging light rail fleet, and such. The Watt I-80 station might be another prime example of where this money would be directed, though it seems legal. But the other thing is, there seems to be no remedy for reimbursement from the city of Sacramento and West Sacramento for the streetcar project. This isn't an RT project. They don't own it. So there should be some kind of reimbursement mechanism from the cities. That's not listed, just these three funds for paying for it. But if funds aren't paid, then other sources are on the hook. It's, for the loan, and that's the let's see, where's that list? For example, I think I'm going to need glasses soon, but pledged funds are the federal operating grant revenues, LTF revenues, STA funds, Measure A revenues, and I think we said fare box as well. So, as far as that's concerned, it's concerning for that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. So I think the best way to handle this, Brent, if you've kind of got enough of a sense of what Stephen's after there, if you just get that clarifying information to Stephen, and then at the same time, please pass it along to the board.
Sure.
Okay. So I think
maybe just a general statement too, to give you some clarity and understanding, and I hope this helps. But I'll get them the details. We receive operating revenues from the federal government to pay for operating expenses. So the majority of the line of credit is used to actually cover those operating expenses. This is to cover salaries, wages, parts, and so forth. There are times, though, like he mentioned, when we get into projects where we have cash flow issues, where we'll actually spend the money and we'll have to use the line of credit until that money flows in. But we're pretty good about collecting. We have a really good accounts receivable department and billing department. So the majority of this line of credit is actually just for operating purposes, because even before streetcar or any big projects, we've had this for many years. So I just want to make sure that was a clarifying statement.
Okay. And then I guess I would ask you as well, included in that information is just addressing reimbursement for borrowing related to a project that we're all understanding is just pass through. So if you could just address that as well in response to Stephen and the board.
Sure, I will do that.
Great.
All right.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second on the floor here. Any other questions, comments from directors? All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Motion carries at 100 votes. Item number 11, information, free rides for seniors age 75 and over, presented by Brent Berniker.
All right. Brent's a busy man this evening.
So over the past few months, we've received a lot of comments from the public about requesting to bring back this lifetime pass for seniors 75 and older. So this issue paper is just to kind of talk about that issue and kind of go through our mindset on how we've evaluated that. And I think the best thing to start with is just starting with a historical timeline of what's occurred. Back in 1992, we introduced a lifetime pass for seniors 80 and older. In 2003, that age was dropped from 80 to 75. In 2009, we had that economic recession that was going on. We did a lot of fare changes. One of those was to actually remove this lifetime pass, and to kind of soften the impact from that, what we did is we created a super senior pass. And what that was is typically at that point in time, there was the senior pass was at $50, and we brought this super senior to $40. So we gave an extra $10 discount for super seniors. But at that point, the lifetime pass was eliminated. And so now we're at 2017, and we're looking at this again. So I just want to give you a little bit of historical perspective. So anytime we have a request for a fare change or some kind of concession, that the first thing we have to do is look at it from a regulatory and a policy standpoint. The first thing we look at is the Public Utilities Code. And just recently, after some research, it became apparent that there is a PUC rule that governs some discounts. And what we found out is, in general, and I'm going to let Mr. Spangler kind of elaborate on this a little bit further, but in general, the rule states that any discount that is provided to seniors must be equally applied to disabled customers. So, Tim, is that something you want to kind of touch on just a little bit further from a...
No, that summarizes.
Okay. Darn it. All right. So the next thing we have to look at is the FTA rules. And the first rule that we have to look at is the half fare rules. How does this impact that? Having a super senior or this lifetime pass has no impact on 2A, which is the half fare rule. But when you go to 2B, which is the Title VI analysis, our current statistics show that many seniors that are riding our transit system would not qualify under the category of low income. And so offering something like this could result in an adverse impact to our low income riders. So we have to consider that as well. The next thing we need to look at is the TDA Act, the Transportation Development Act. You'll recall that the fare box recovery target that we have set is at 23%. Currently, I said we're around 20%, a little bit higher right now. So offering any fare discounts just kind of gets us further away from that target of 23%. That being said, we always can supplement, and we do, to make sure we comply with that rule. But these are just some of the things we go through. The next thing we look at is SAC-RT's policies, and some of the policies that we have to look at is fiscal sustainability and the fare box policy as well. And so we have to ask, when these requests come, how will it impact those policies? And then after that, we look at the fiscal impact. So if we offer a discount for seniors 75 and older, the discount's about $55,000 annually. If we offer a discount to seniors 75 and older plus to disabled riders, the fare impact is $3.1 million. And like I said earlier, with that PUC requirement, what we're saying is we cannot just offer the first option. We have to offer both option 1 and 2. So that's what we're faced with right now. So then the next thing we look at is what are the ridership gains that could occur with this kind of an offering. And right off the bat, we said, well, in year one, we think by offering a discount to that lifetime pass, essentially, you'd probably gain about 100,000 riders, which is a good ridership number. And then in year two, it would probably start growing to about 225,000. Again, these are approximates. You'd have to wait to see what those actuals come out with. But I think what's tough is due to the earlier issue, and most difficult is the PUC requirement. To implement this with this PUC requirement, it would require us to do a multiple offering, which is fiscally pretty tough right now. So I think at this point, the best option is to explore other options and try to stick with our strategic plan, which is try to find a new alternative source that could address this. So I'd like to open it up.
And I just have a quick question, Brent. So on the ridership gain estimates, was that assuming the just senior or
just
senior
senior,
and
correct,
disabled?
just senior.
Just senior.
I think that would be, we haven't been able to figure out how we'd extrapolate the disabled,
Right.
like how many,
Okay,
yeah.
I just wanted to make
Yep.
sure that, since it wasn't stated there. Okay, so I do have a number of requests to speak on this item. Any questions, comments from directors before I
quickly.
bring up? Yeah, Director Twink.
Yeah, just clarification, so then, on the PUC, when did they rule, or when did they make their determination that if it's for one, it's for all?
Well, it's actually not the Public Utilities Commission. It's the California Public Utilities Code, where our enabling
So
act
it's
is.
legislated?
It's legislated, yeah.
And when was that chaptered?
Very recently, 1973, I believe.
So what? So what we had in place since 1992 that went away in 2009, that we were supposed to comport with
Correct.
that back in 73.
Yeah. That's why they call it practicing law.
Got it. Good. Thanks.
All right. Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and bring up request to speak here on this item. So we'll start out with Russell Rawlings. Russell, yeah, create some space there for Russell there, Brent. Thank you. And then after Russell will be Helen O'Connell, and then Robert Copeland. Good evening, Russell.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Russell Rawlings. I am the Director of Advocacy Services at Resources for Independent Living, where we serve individuals with disabilities and seniors, many of whom are low income. In the report that you've been given today, there is an alternate scenario that was not explored at all in the presentation given by Mr. Berniger. That is that San Francisco Muni has developed a program for low-income seniors and people with disabilities to be able to have access to free rides. And I believe that that is in keeping with all of RT's mission, and that it should be a program that is explored. It was kind of sad to see that we've had this program moving along since 1992, and now all of a sudden we've just fallen off a cliff where the PUC is apparently our barrier. I noticed that the PUC code was suspiciously missing from all of the language, both in the working report and in the presentation. I read it myself. It does not say that you must offer at every single level an equivalent discount to people with disabilities. So I would encourage the board to educate themselves a little bit and look at that code, and then possibly direct staff to do a little bit more digging. I think we can do better. I think this is a big one, and I think that it would impact a lot of people. I think it would be a big thing that would get ridership up. And also, it's important to notice that for every senior and person with disability, you're probably gaining at least one additional rider that is paying full fare. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Helen? And after Helen is Robert, and after Robert is Jeffrey Tartagia. Good evening, Helen.
The Sacramento Transit Riders Union supports bringing dignity and mobility to the seniors in our community that have limited transportation options. We were disappointed to read the staff's analysis that it would be impossible to bring back the free fare for seniors over 75. Staff has identified the San Francisco Muni as offering a free pass for seniors and all disabled persons that meet certain levels of low-income thresholds. We request staff to provide a cost analysis of this model applied to regional transit. We believe that the estimated increase of 100,000 to 225,000 additional boardings is worth pursuing. This discounted fare is important to individuals who have transit dependent and living on low income, fixed incomes. I think we shouldn't be balancing our budgets on the backs of people that are hardworking all of their lives, and now they don't have cars to drive because they've had to relinquish their driver's licenses because of their age. And I believe we should help them get around with the free pass, because we owe something to our seniors, and I think it would be a good step in the right direction.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. So Robert Copeland, and after Robert is Jeffrey Tartagia, and then Stephen Barassa. Good evening, Robert.
What Russell and Helen said made very good points, both of them. And when was that PUC? In 1973? Is that what the guy said? Then why did you have the lifetime pass after 1973 then? I would do some more digging in that ruling and see if we can get the lifetime pass for, at least for the senior citizens, if that's possible. And if not, the lower fare, at least for the disabled population under a certain income. And now I think that'll make good public relations for RT. Have you ever thought of that? Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Jeffrey, can we get the microphone back there to Jeffrey? Thanks, Adam.
Well, I wasn't planning to be here, but as I think Don Natoli can remember when we had this thing about grandfathering lifetime passes, I think this analysis needs to be re-examined and look at how many current lifetime passes are currently being utilized, because I remember back in 2009 that it was less than 1,000 people, and the initial reason why it was brought down from 80 to 75 is that only people that were using transportation at that level was the Asian community. So they brought it down to 75 to include a few, but it was less than 1,000 people. And I know that some of them right now that do ride it, that they use it less than 5 or 10 times a month. So question mark is your revenue figures where you get there, I think needs to be researched. I think you need to look at exactly what the PUC code offered and you said in there, because is it for only all disability or everybody over 75 disability wise? And I would also offer lastly on this that you came up with up to $9 million, and it seems like that's a wildly radical number to come up with as far as potential revenue. It just seems like this whole thing needs to be searched, and you've got lifetime riders right now that you could get some idea of patterns and habits right now and look and see, and also view. Yes, you're going to have a larger population, but at the same time, they were also using paratransit, and you're paying those dollars. So would this not be, again, a much more cost-effective tool to have when they're simply going to get their groceries or their medical doctor if they can ride in public transportation? And most of those are Social Security incomes that are less than $1,000, and this is why I say Henry. That means less than $22,000 a year is generally probably their income level.
Thanks, Jeffrey. And Stephen?
Hello, Board. This is my own personal remarks, not associated with any organization, but I'm actually 55. I don't disclose that very often, but in 7 short years, I will be a senior citizen and get the benefit of ridership at that time. But this lifetime pass is not for all seniors. This is for those seniors that reach the milestone of 75 years old. So in the spirit of that, I think this could be extended to disabled riders. Any disabled rider that reaches the age of 75 would qualify for the lifetime pass as well. This is what you call intersectionality. Well, yes, there are seniors too who have reached that milestone, and maybe that could be a compromise that meets that requirement. And if that is a possible reading of the codes, then I would like the board to direct staff to explore what the lifetime pass would cost for those members who are 75 and older, and see what that looks like for the revenue. And that is it.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Stephen. So questions, comments from board members on this informational item? Director Natoli?
Yeah, very quickly. So kind of back to the original question I asked, and some of the comments were made. You cited the code section in the staff report. Is there a distinction or is there a delineation that would allow for some sort of interpretation, or is it very clearly stated in that code section that it doesn't, to some of the things that Mr. Ross said, but others alluded to, Tim?
It appears pretty clear to us in the legal department. I've also reached out to some of my colleagues at other transit agencies in California, noting that none of them provide free passes for seniors, and querying them as to why it was this Public Utilities Code section. So I think they've interpreted the same way. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not looking at every possible angle we can look at here and see if we can make a run at it. But just at this time, and we're continuing to do that research, but at this time we wanted to put that forward.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
That is why our recommendation says continue to explore this option.
Okay.
So we're going to continue to do research.
Steve?
first, I'd like us to pursue the recommendation. I think that if we can find a way to do this, it would be great. I have two real questions, though. Well, one is probably more direction than question. I think if and when, if ever, we go back to find funding for regional transit at the ballot, we should include this in a ballot measure to make sure that we have the funding to provide the service necessary to serve these folks. That's going to be a policy decision of whether it's this board, STA, or some other entity that may put it on the ballot. But I think there's plenty of reason to support that. But the real question I have, and Tiffany might have an answer, is given the paratransit service for senior and disabled riders that RT is partners with paratransit on, we heard earlier, we help fund. They also are designated as the CTSA. How does paratransit fulfill this role already versus RT?
Tiffany, can I ask
yeah,
to answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, either
Yeah.
Tiffany's not really on the hot seat, so she could say no.
Indirectly, well, for the actual ADA rides, the fare structure is adopted by RT. For the rides above and beyond, the fare structure is actually adopted by the Paratransit Inc. Board. It is currently a lower fare. That was a direction that was done based on accountability. There have been explorations, because we're a nonprofit, into the ability to start a low-income fare fund. It's something that we kicked off with the anniversary of the ADA and are continuing. So there's things we're looking on. We've actually outreached and are looking at what we know and resources we may have to help in this process, and working with our partners on what the flexibility is moving forward on this. In general, we're always looking at fare policy and ways to incentivize passengers who can use fixed route. Where can we provide training and things to really make sure that if there are low-income seniors and persons with disabilities who can potentially use other sources, that we can give them the resources they need to be able to access fixed route or light rail to help reduce their costs. And we're continuing to find ways through things like Connect Card to even advance that further. So it's a conversation we're just starting to get engaged
Tiffany
in.
and I discussed this to say if PI's role can fulfill this or work together, but it looks like we still have some challenges.
Are there grants available to help us with, if we decide to go down this route, are there grants available to subsidize this?
I think that's one of the things we've not done historically, but I know there's been an interest by our board, and we would be interested in working with the RT board. Because we are a nonprofit, there are flexibilities and abilities for us to both access funds and donations from other funding sources that RT does not have access to for programs like this, and to administer them differently. And that's part of our actual mission as being the Consolidated Transportation Service Agency. And again, moving forward in a effort on the measure funds, it'd be something potentially would be available to both agencies to administer.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, that was informational, so we will move on to the next item, please.
Reports, ideas, and questions from directors, if any.
Director Hansen?
I just had one. I noted in the B there was a report about Caltrans working on the Business 80 bottleneck, and one of the things that's come up repeatedly is the buses that RT runs and probably other transit agencies being caught in that congestion. As that project moves forward, I'd like the board to consider potentially supporting Caltrans's effort and to know some information related to any delays that we experience on routes that use that portion of the Business 80.
Sure.
Okay, I think that's it for that.
Next is the announcement of closed session items. Conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, existing litigation. Item 1, Sonia Wall versus RT. Please note there is no report out of closed session this evening.
Great, thank you. So with that, we will adjourn to closed session.